Hey there, welcome to SharkCast Pod, a podcast dedicated to the greatest sporting club in the history of the entire universe. This show is brought to you by Dyson Logistics, a Royal Motor Yacht Club in Port Hacking, and Jason Hawes at Cripps & Cripps Real Estate. My name is Sam Shinazzi, an OG from 2015. 2015 is when we began the podcast. I've been following this club for a lot longer than that. Speaking of things a lot longer than that, this is a very special episode. It's a preview episode for the Sharks at Parramatta game, and we thought, who better than one of my oldest and definitely dearest friends of mine to come on and talk everything Parramatta Eels. He is a lifelong fan. He's passionate. He is knowledgeable, and you're going to love him. He can talk underwater about the Eels, which is exactly what we need. And please, everyone, welcome Mr. Buddy Glass, better known as Mr. Bruno Brayovic of Peabody fame and all other stuff. We'll get into that. But he's my buddy Bruno. Hi, Bruno. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you so much for having me on here. I feel honored and slightly kind of trepidous, like stepping into the Shark Tank.
You're in the Shark Tank, and it's probably a bit weird for you to hear me talk this way because it's a little bit more slick than what we're like at the pub at 2 a.m. going, I can't believe we didn't win the comp again. But
yeah, no, I've heard you say that a few times, yeah.
Yeah, but not anymore because we did win it, but we'll talk about that as well. But you're based in Tasmania as of recent times with your beautiful family, but you're Sydney born and bred, born in Campsie. We'll get into that as well, but I thought I'd give our listeners just a brief history on you and I. You and I met through music. I was, I believe, playing in a band called C-.
That's right.
And you were in Peabody, which had been around for at least a few years.
Oh, I reckon only a couple of years at that point.
Couple of years.
Yep.
And so we met. Did we meet at the Sander, or did we meet on the telephone?
We met on the telephone because I had your demo somehow, maybe through my radio connections. I was on community radio, and I had your demo, which I really liked, Goofy. And I think we met on the telephone the first time.
Yes.
And the first time we ever played together was at the Annandale with Fly Speak and Me Neither, Craig News Band.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's the first time C- and Peabody ever played together. And I'd met Wes a few times.
Okay. Yeah, I have no memory of that gig, but I did see something which I sent to you, I think, recently, where we played at the Sandringham with Smudge, which is obviously a very special night. But we became friends very quickly. We realized we had a lot in common with the local scene, with our favorite bands overseas. And then I do remember when, I don't know how it came up, but you were really into footy. And I was like, I'm really into footy too. And at that time in our music scene, at least, it was kind of this secret thing you didn't talk about, but then you'd meet someone or you'd hear things like the rehearsal studio that we used to go to. You'd see a crazy sticker or whatever. It'd be like, it's okay to like footy if you find the right people to talk to them about. And
right.
And I remember you straight away. I was like, he's a really cool guy. And wow, he likes footy. This is going to be great. And I think that is why we became super close so quick, which is awesome. And we've been close ever since, been through a lot up and down in our lives, and we've been in each other's bands and that kind of stuff. We've done a lot of experiencing life together, which has been great. But tell me about why you became a Parramatta Eel as a young man growing up in Campsie. Originally, we should say, if I may say, you were born overseas.
Yeah, I was waiting patiently to correct you, Sammy, which is something, I'm not known for my patience, but I am known for, correcting mistakes. And you mentioned born and bred in Campsie, Sydney. Yeah, I wasn't born in Campsie. But I know you know that. I was born in Chile in South America, and like many people do, migrated to Australia, to Sydney in 1983. And as most of your listeners will probably know, like you arrive in Australia in 1983, you're going to get hit with Bob Hawke, Alan Bond, and the Parramatta Eels, right? So 3 great Australian entities. So I arrived in January 83, but where we arrived was the Villawood Migrant Hostel, which is like a housing thing for migrants, right? There was one in Maroubra that had been closed down earlier, but this one was in Villawood and it was still up and running. And it was migrants, so you could come and go as you please. It later on controversially became the Villawood Detention Centre for refugees, for people to be incarcerated under the mandatory detention laws if you were a refugee. This was different. We arrived as migrants, so we were permanent residents straight away, not citizens, but permanent residents. And when you so it was full of being 1983, you still had lots of Vietnamese coming after the Vietnam War, lots of Hispanics, lots of Chileans coming, and lots of other South Americans, because I guess by that stage the shit had well and truly hit the fan in South America. Lots of Lebanese coming as a result of the 70s and early 80s civil war in Lebanon. So it was that sort of vibe. And you got enrolled at Old Guildford Primary. And at Old Guildford Primary, I'm pretty sure the colours were blue and gold. And somebody told me that someone like Brett Kenny or Ray Price went there. I don't know if that's true. But what I do know is that some kids got me aside and went, you go for para now. And I didn't speak any English, so I didn't know what they were talking about. But I remember the words, because at that age, you sort of pick up on stuff pretty quickly. And I made a friend, another Chilean friend. He lived in Fairfield, so not too far. And he told me all about it. He goes, yeah, you got to go for para. Everyone here goes for para, and they're the best team. Trust me, they're the best team. You'll love it. And we watched a game where they beat Canterbury, which was perfect, right? Because anytime we beat Canterbury, it's magic. And so I was sold. And I didn't even know at that point that we'd won 2 previous grand finals, right? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was 2 out. We didn't even have a TV. So to tell you the truth, I was 7. I didn't even realise later that year that we won the 83 grand final, even though I was in Australia by that point. No idea. I remember by 84 because I watched Canterbury. I'd watched Canterbury play para in the 84 grand final with my dad. Right. By that stage, we'd moved to Campsie, and that was Canterbury territory, obviously. But I wasn't going to change my spots. By that stage, I was well and truly entrenched. And also, as you know, Sammy, I'm a bit of a contrarian.
Yes. So
being a Parramatta fan in Canterbury territory sort of was right up my alley, played right into my sort of me against the world kind of vibe. And I watched the 84 grand final with my dad. I think Mick Cronin scored a try, but missed a couple of goals. We lost that one, I think, 6-4. And then, of course, I watched the 85 grand final. Canterbury beat St George 7-6. And then such incredibly low-scoring affairs. 85, 84, 85, 86, a total of 5 points separating the winning teams from the losing teams. Crazy. Yeah. And then, of course, the magical trialist grand final, which I've seen many times since and will continue to watch as my only source of joy and amusement when it comes to Parramatta. So that's how I became a Parramatta fan. He basically was entrenched by the kids and the families around me in the area that I first arrived in Australia, in being Guildford and that sort of general area.
And what was it like once you started to grow and you're still based in Campsie? What was that like growing up as a young teenager? Was it pretty wild?
Oh, yeah, look, because it got pretty rough at times, because the other thing to remember is that Campsie is really multicultural. It always has been, still is, with different, the demographics of multicultural suburbs in particular change. So, for example, Harris Park near Parramatta was all old school Lebanese, and now it's Indian, 100%. Well, it's not 100%, but it's Little India, right? Yeah. It's amazing. Without making any Shire jokes and totally deadpan serious, obviously in the Shire, that demographic has remained fairly the same for a long time. and in lots of places in Sydney, it remains like that. Where there's massive multicultural communities, it actually changes every sort of 15 to 20 years. Campsie at the time was a lot of Arabs, so Lebanese, Syrians, and different from different Arab countries. Lots of Asian kids, lots of Asian families, Chinese, Korean. It then became Little Korea, right? It was mostly Koreans, but at the time there were lots of sort of like Greeks, Lebanese, Italian who were all into Canterbury, and these were a lot of them, were families of like 6, 7 kids, a lot of boys. They grew up in sort of not rough environments in the sense that I'm not saying there was like family violence or alcoholism. When I say rough, I mean just sort of like, boisterous and, boys sorting things out the way that boys used to and still do a little bit. So they were used to sort of like having things a little bit like, you don't like this, I'm going to punch you in the face. It's just how it was, But the other thing is that I'm white, right?
Yeah.
I'm a migrant, but I'm white.
Yeah.
Because of my European heritage. So I used to cop, like, no shit, I used to get this all the time. You skip, go back to Cronulla. Which I would find hilarious. You skip, go back to Cronulla, you skip.
Wow.
So I'd get a lot of that, right? And I'd go a lot, and I was also very weedy and nerdy. So I copped a lot of shit anyway. I wouldn't say bullied, but pushed around. I got pushed around a fair bit, not just at school, but on the streets of Campsie, less so at school. Because at school, you find your people, right? You find your places, you find your teachers and all that sort of stuff. But just on the streets of Campsie, the mean streets of Campsie, Beamy Street mostly, a couple of hairy moments. And every now and then I decided to go out in my para jersey. And it was a dumb thing to do, really, because I would cop it. I got pushed. I got verbally attacked, circled, by dudes going, come on. If it wasn't for the fact that as argumentative as I am, I'm not a fighter. Yeah. So I'm not the kind of guy that'll go, yeah, come on. Mostly because I know I'll lose that fight. Yeah. So thankfully I just kept my head down and went, no, I'm making my statement here. I'm just going to keep walking. So look, it made for some interesting times, but at the same time, Parramatta's always been such a popular team. It wasn't that rare to see a Parramatta fan there. It also wasn't rare to see Balmain fans, West fans, St. George fans, all the classic Sydney teams. Less so your Cronulla's, obviously, because we're a little further away. And, you've got the geographical divide with Cronulla, right? But even St. George, which is the closest one to you guys, to Cronulla, it's not that far really from Campsie down south to the St. George area, So, I wasn't the only one, but I was probably the only one stupid enough to show it.
Now, you mentioned Beamy Street. Now, that's made famous on your debut EP, Peabody's debut EP, High Cycle. Now, we do have some Peabody fans who listen in each week. I know this because I've mentioned you before, I've played you before, and we get lots of nice responses when we do that. But for people who don't know you, because there are thousands of people listening to you right now, tell us about the origins of Peabody and what it became and that kind of thing.
Oh, it's this band that I've been in. It's a band that I've been in now. And even though I've moved to Hobart and left my bandmates behind, I consider the band to still be going. We have a show in Sydney in October on grand final weekend. That's not a coincidence. I may, just quietly, just as an aside, stupidly have booked that gig thinking that Parramatta might get into the grand final and I might be able to play a gig and go and watch the Eels in the grand final. Clearly one of those two things is not going to happen. But anyway, so Ben is the main songwriter and bass player in Peabody. Ben and I started the band in high school, or a version of the band, if you will. And we finished high school in 93. And by 94, we were well and truly, we started playing gigs with various drummers around, including your old friend Graham Truan, of course, who pretends to go for the Sharks, but we all know he doesn't really like footy. Ben, being another Campsie boy, is a massive Canterbury fan, massive Bulldogs fan. And he's hilarious to go and watch the footy with because, as you know, Ben's this really placid, sort of like gentle sort of guy. But you go to the footy with him And it's like, you're going to get your head knocked off. Like, he's shouting for people to get paralyzed and heads chopped off and kill him. And like, he becomes like a proper savage, right? Which is funny / concerning.
So Ben grew up in Campsie with Lebanese heritage.
Yeah, Benny's of Lebanese heritage. So like a lot of people of Lebanese background in that area. But I guess because there was a large Lebanese community in the Canterbury area, it makes sense that they go for Canterbury.
Yeah.
Likewise, there's a lot of Lebanese who go for Parramatta because of the proximity to Harris Park, where a lot of families first moved in the 70s from Lebanon. And in fact, Ben's father originally moved into Harris Park, I'm pretty sure, as a new Lebanese Australian. So we started this band and we played lots of gigs, and we've put out 5 albums. Five albums? Yeah, 5 albums, a couple of EPs and singles, and we toured around Australia, and a couple of times once we got to go overseas, which is nice. Played a million shows with you in your various sort of I guess the various guises of your bands, of whatever your project may be at the time, whether it be solo or with C- or the C- project and all that sort of stuff. And then what are we now? 30 years later, here we are.
Amazing, and it's no surprise or secret that you actually have gotten better the older you've gotten, and that's not a surprise. It's more just a statement. And like, I remember hearing, I think, the last record and going, this is still another step forward. I wasn't at your last show, but the show before that you would have played, I would have been at, and just one of the great live bands. I don't want to use the word rock. Like, there's more to the rock.
And I'm not offended by the word rock.
No, I know, but you grew up on Midnight Oil amongst a million other bands, but you have always had that great live, almost that Springsteen thing where, like, this is the last show I'm ever going to play. I'm going to give you everything I got. Something we all do, but you really live up to that kind of, motto. And if you haven't heard Peabody, go check them out. And I mean, you'd probably know some of their songs from. What year was Professional Against? That was like 98?
Professional Against was 2003, I think, and then the New Violence was 2005, and they're the 2 records that actually got played on the radio quite a bit. We were lucky enough for that to happen, because not everyone gets that.
Yeah.
So we consider ourselves pretty lucky. That got played on Triple J quite a bit, and that's, I guess, in those that sort of 2001 to 2009 period is where we sort of did the bulk of our like touring, and when we had something to sort of push forward, I guess, in terms of a profile. Later on, it got a little harder to do, but no less enjoyable. And the live shows, like you say, like it does for us, and it would be the same for you or most local bands. It doesn't matter if there's 2 people or 200 people. You're there. It could be the last show you ever play. That's the thing. Yeah. It could be the last show you ever play, especially now with, and I've got to say now we've got a couple of, people still come up to Jared and go, "Are you the new drummer?" And he goes, yeah, I've only been in the band 13 years now. I think Jared has now been in the band 17 years.
Okay.
Right? Which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
And Tristan's been in the band for 16 or 15 years, right?
Okay.
Our other guitarist. So they're the new guys, right? Trix goes for the Broncos. He's a mad Broncos fan. He grew up in Penrith, but he grew up during he's younger than us, and he grew up during Broncos dominance period. And he hates where he grew up.
Yeah.
So to differentiate himself, he went, "I'll go for the Broncos." Jared plays the perfect Eastern Suburbs Roosters supporter, where he doesn't really know what's going on with footy until they're winning, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, they're doing pretty well." So he plays up to that beautifully. He's just fantastic.
I don't think I even knew that he was a Rooster, so to speak.
This is the thing. He's a Roosters fan sometimes, or he doesn't really like footy, so he plays up to the fact that we all say that Roosters fans don't really like rugby league. They just, they mildly like the Roosters. They probably like the Swans half as much as they like the Roosters, so yeah, so yeah, but we still enjoy it. We still play gigs, and who knows? Who knows what will happen in the future?
All right, we'll bounce back to some music, but let's talk some footy. Tell us a bit about. Let's do a bit of a Q&A with you about your Eels fandom. Who's your favourite player of all time?
All time?
Yeah, or give me a couple if you like.
Yeah, no, look, it'd be hard to go past Sterlo. I think the fact that he's been such a champ off the field afterwards has probably cemented that. Whereas someone like Ray Price, I love him, but geez, he carries on a bit, he bangs on a bit. Look, sometimes he's got very good points. But Sterlo, there was something about him. I once turned on the little transistor radio because I was nowhere near a TV, and it was a Saturday game between East and Parramatta. And Sterlo scored 3 tries and set up a bunch of others. And he didn't score many tries, but
was that the 10 out of 10 game?
I think it might have been. Yeah, the famous 10 out of 10 game. Yes. Yeah, where Big League or whoever it was,
Rugby League
Week, Rugby League Week or Big League gave him 10 out of 10. But other matches, because he didn't retire, of course, at the same time as he was part of the downward spiral as well.
He hung on,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, because he hung on until about 89, I think it might have been, when Cement Gillespie tackled him playing for West, and that redid Sterlo's shoulder, and that was it for Sterlo. He never played another game. But he was part of those sort of darker years of 87, 88, and as I said, I think 89. And so, and to watch him carry the team, to 8th or 9th place, and I used to go to every match. It was still magical, Like I remember games against the Broncos and the Broncos were good, I mean, I know they're good now, but we're talking like Wally Lewis, Gene Miles.
It was the Queensland team, basically.
Yeah, and so we're talking 88, 89, and they came in with a boom, right? And I remember at Para Stadium and ironically, Bob Lindner was playing for Parramatta at the time, and they came back from 14-0 down, or a 14-point deficit anyway, and we didn't win the match. But I remember it was Sterlo who gave us the only chance to actually win it. So I just always remember matches like that, his defense, his commitment, the whole thing. He was incredible. I've got to say that he was probably my favorite player ever.
Okay. What about in more modern times? Doesn't have to be this year, but like were you a Hindmarsh guy or?
Yeah, I mean, how can you go past Nathan Hindmarsh? Look, Nathan Hindmarsh was playing at the same time as Jared Hayne, and for some reason, I got on an old match at KO, the one where it's 2009. Where Parramatta won all those matches in a row to get into the 8 and then beat St George, who were coming first, to get into whatever the prelim or whatever it was.
Remember,
and Jared Hayne scored. Jared Hayne was on that run of form, that famous run of form, and he scored one of the best solo tries you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Obviously, that run of form, Jared Hayne, I've rarely, if ever, have seen something like that. People compared Trebojic's run a couple of years ago, or I can't remember when it was. I still think that Jared Haynes was better, and he was incredible to watch. There was something always about him that, all those rumors that you'd always hear about him being a bit selfish and about him being the man and not really putting in training.
Yeah.
I tend to believe a lot of it, that there was a little bit of toxicity there. I'm the kind of guy that likes to separate the art from the person themselves. So I'm not going to mention anything about Jared Hayne's personal life and the things that have gone on, other than to say that it's abhorrent, and I'm not a fan.
Of course.
But if we're just talking on the footy field, Nathan Hindmarsh in more recent times, for the obvious reasons, that the effort, the bum crack, the number of tackles, the heart and soul of the team.
Yeah.
Gus Gould used to say, though, and he was right, that when Nathan Hindmarsh was doing everything, it meant the team was going badly because he was doing everything.
Yeah.
But in more recent times, as much as he's a bit of a sook and sometimes he's a bit hard to take on the field the way he carries on, but I kind of love his competitive spirit, and he's Mitchell Moses.
Okay.
To really give West Tigers fans the shits, when he transferred to Parramatta halfway through that year, I started, and they hated him, right? West Tigers fans hated Mitchell Moses, probably still do, right? because of the way he carried on. But as soon as he joined and started going well for Parramatta, I started calling him Parramatta legend Mitchell Moses, as if he'd been playing with us for years. Oh, Parramatta legend Mitchell Moses. Yeah, he's great. Always loved Mitchell Moses, Parramatta legend, you know. But I really think he's a Parramatta legend now. I mean, he plays exactly the way a halfback, my favourite halfbacks have always played. Guys like Sean Johnson, Daly Cherry Evans to a lesser degree, but the guys that I love halfbacks with an awesome running game, right? And for a while there, Mitchell Moses was the fastest guy in the team. I'm pretty sure he's still the fastest halfback around. Maybe Nico Hines. I don't know how fast, because obviously Nico Hines has played fullback and things like that. And maybe a couple of the young guys coming out. I don't know. But Mitchell Moses is an incredibly fast halfback, so he's got a strong running game. Obviously, his kicking game and passing game is top notch. I think his defence is awesome. And he was a turnstile at Balmain at the West, but he was also like 19 or 20, and he'd scoot out of the line. His defence is the number of tackles. I think for years they put bigger guys up against him, thinking that he'll miss the tackle. But for years he hasn't. He falls off tackles every now and then. But if you were that size going up against, I don't know, Sean Bloor or whoever it was, you'd fall off a couple of tackles yourself. But I think his defence is the way he reads defence is really good. And as I think he's proven, the way he communicates with his defenders on outside or inside clearly has to be good, because who knew that our defence would turn to shit when he was injured? I expected our attack to go bad, but our defence is all of a sudden gone. Now, I'm not saying that that's all Mitchell Moses, but I think his defence is underestimated for sure. Is totally underestimated. So, yeah, I reckon...
The clock is ticking. We'll find out exactly what your man's made of.
Yeah, of course, we absolutely will. We'll see. Hopefully, his foot comes good, and we'll see. But yeah, Moses and Moses is my current guy.
Yeah, nice. Tell me about some of the more memorable games you've attended in person.
I went to a game in again '88, Parramatta Stadium. My dad and I got tickets above one of the try lines. Canberra scored 22 unanswered points, 22-0. Now, I don't know if you remember, but 22 points in those days, you don't come back from that.
No.
People forget that. Parramatta nearly came back from 22-0 down against whoever the hell we lost to last week by a million points. Who did we lose to last week? Souths.
Yeah.
Souths were winning 22-0. Parramatta got back to 22-16, and the commentators were like, "Oh yeah, they're coming after them now. They might get there." Like if it was nothing, right?
Yeah.
But 22-0 was a huge thing in 1988, so they scored the tries directly in front of us. The team swapped, and Bob Lidner scored 2 tries. John Muggleton kicked them from everywhere, and Parramatta won 30-20. So we saw 52 points scored at that. At that end, it was magical. A lot of those older games, 1987. Parramatta and St. George at the Sydney Cricket Ground.
Ooh, okay.
Raining, 20-all. John Muggleton gets tackled on the halfway line with 3 seconds to go. And we're thinking, what are you doing, you idiot? Why didn't you try? It was soggy as well, the big soggy wet balls, the leather balls. He stands up to play the ball, and there are no markers. Remember the days when you could play the ball forward if you had no markers?
I do.
He taps the ball, takes 1 step, and kicks a field goal from halfway to make it 21-20 to Parramatta. It was, again, just absolutely magical. And in more recent times, I guess the opening of Combank Stadium where Parramatta won, I think, was 54-0 to West Tigers. Yeah. You may notice that a lot of the memorable games are from older, better times than recently. Wow. But look, in terms of games that I've been to, I don't go to as many games as I used to for many reasons. As I know you get to lots of pretty much every game, Sammy. But geographical distance, kids, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of games that I've been to, those ones stand out. Oh, another one where Parramatta and Balmain were both coming last after 7 rounds. Can't remember what year this was.
Yeah.
I know that Andrew Leeds was our fullback.
Okay.
And it was before he played for West. I think he might have just come from rugby union. And Parramatta and Balmain both were winless. after 7 rounds, and they played each other. I think it was on Mother's Day or something like that, or it couldn't have been Mother's. I can't remember, but anyway, and they were locked at 14 all. And Steve Roach or Benny Elias, one of the two, they were both involved, kicked the ball in the ruck with about 10 seconds to go. Penalty to Parramatta. They protested, of course. The hooter went, and Andrew Leeds kicked the winning goal. They just have the win of the season, and just the joy of having that win. You know, it was just it was unbelievable. You know, a lot of my favorite moments have come when there's a release, like a desperate release of coming out, like seeing a light coming out of a dark period. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Because I don't have that many good times to remember. You know, getting to the 2022 grand final was great. Getting to the 2001 grand final was great. Getting to the 2009 grand final was great. But the deflating feeling afterwards just means I wipe it from my memory.
Did you go to all three of those?
No, I went 2001 and 22.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't go. I went to the St George Para game, the one that I went with Pat, actually, who massive St George fan. So I went to the first semi, whatever that's called. I never remember the names of those matches in terms of, yeah.
I mean, 01 must have been brutal.
I cried.
Yeah.
I cried. I drive not straight away. Not there. I dropped my dad off. I wasn't living at home at the time. I dropped my dad off in Campsie and driving from Campsie to a party in Newtown on the way there.
Probably to see me.
And I pulled over and actually had a cry. It was like, I think it's the only time I've cried because of a footy game. But it was just so unbelievable that Ben Kennedy and Andrew Johns did us over like that. And Danny Badira's, you know, like, I mean, look, when I look about it now, when I look back at that match now with a colder heart, what an unbelievable team, that Newcastle team. What a feat to put, like, the psychological leap to beat the team that had scored more points than any other team in the history of the comp.
Yeah.
More tries than any other team. They were on fire. They were, you know, they could not be beaten. So the psychological leap to make, let alone the physical one, what an amazing team.
In the second half, I know the Knights kind of turned off and you turned on.
Mm-hmm.
Was it, like, is my memory correct in that it got pretty close at the end or not?
I think it was 28-24.
Right.
I think the final score was 28-24 or thereabouts. Oh yeah, it got close. But
like, you were legitimately coming home strong.
No, see, this is the thing. We on the scoreboard, it looked like we were coming home strong, but it wasn't one of those we've scored. Oh shit, we've scored again, and the crowd is really playing a factor now. We've scored again. This is on. It wasn't like that. It was, oh yeah, consolation try. Oh yeah, another consolation try. I think Newcastle may have even scored a try in between one of those. Do you know what I mean? Right. It was a little bit like I mean, Parramatta scored a couple of late tries in the Penrith grand final of 2022, right? And they were technically well within striking distance, especially today's game, well within striking distance. But I don't think anyone ever thought that they were going to get them. And it was the same in 2001. There was just never a feeling that, oh, we're actually coming back in this. They were all consolation tries, even right up until the end.
All right, let's jump ahead to this year, and we'll include past seasons. But this year, how do you feel about Brad Arthur getting the boot?
I think it's probably the right thing to do. I think it's got to it's got to have to happen at some point.
Is it the right time?
I think he's a good coach. Put it that way. I think he's a very good coach.
Yeah.
Is it the right time? They probably should have done it at the beginning of 2 seasons ago.
Right. So, but I'm saying, is mid-season ever?
No, it's not ideal. It's not ideal.
Okay.
And I think at the time they did it, it seemed like a weird time to do it, because it's like, are you shitting me? You've had all these chances. We got a freaking wooden spoon among there, in there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing it now, like all of a sudden they're freaking out about our results, like the board or whatever is, or the powers that be, are all of a sudden freaking out about our results. Really,
especially
now?
with the two guys coming back this week. It's like, well,
yeah,
there is guys.
It seems weird. I think it's the right move, but it seems weird the way they did it. For those that are saying, "Oh, he was stabbed in the back," come on, dude. It's like it's a professional sport. This happens all the time. It happens all the time. It's not that big a deal. No one's dead. No one has stolen from anyone. No one has insulted anyone's mother. It's just you're no longer fit for the job. And he's made some good dough, some good memories, some good friends. Yes. He himself said it.
Have you ever seen someone take a loss so well? Like, what a gentleman! The next day.
Yeah, it's not surprising. Like, I don't know him, obviously, but he's always carried himself with that sort of, if anything, it may be why he doesn't go that extra step, because he's not that much of an asshole. Like, I don't think anybody thinks that Craig Bellamy's a really good bloke other than Cameron Munster. Like, I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever.
I don't know. I know what you're saying. But
what a lovely guy. What a top-notch guy. I'm not saying he's a bad person.
I know.
But I think everyone associated with rugby league, probably gets that he's a bit of a prickly character. I don't mean a prick. I mean a prickly character. A bit,
I'm just going to pull you up, Bruno. You don't know about the rule, but you only get one swear word. You've had about 6.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're all good.
You should have told me that before.
Yeah, I should have, and I forgot, but we've got very young listeners and very old listeners.
I'll censor myself.
We're all good. No, we're all good.
But the same with Wayne Bennett, right? Nobody thinks, I'd really love to be stuck in an elevator alone with Wayne Bennett. He probably wouldn't talk to you. He'd probably you'd go, "Hi, Wayne," and he'd go, right? But they're amazing coaches. Brad Arthur would probably sit there and listen to you, and by the end of it, he'd be hugging you, going, "It'll be all right, mate. It'll be all right." And he's a top bloke. Right. But maybe that is something to do with why he hasn't gone that extra mile.
So who are they going to sign for next year, do you think?
Oh, anyone but Trent Barrett, please. My Lord.
I don't think that's not on the cards. Unless you win the comp, it's probably not on the cards.
Yeah. Your guess is as good as mine. Look, it sounds like Jason Riles is a decent coach. It sounds like Josh Hannay is a decent coach. Is Josh Hannay with you guys? Is that right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So you'd know better than me. You talk to players and coaches and stuff like that. It sounds like those two guys are well respected amongst players and coaching staff. So I wouldn't have any objections to either of those. I also like the idea of new blood, as in, like, I don't want Madge Maguire. I personally, I like the idea. I'd take Luke Burt, who's got some, who's had a couple of good results in lower grades.
So where is he now? Everyone keeps talking about him. Where is he? What's he doing?
I actually don't know. I think he coached a couple of teams on the Gold Coast, and I don't know if he was coaching Queensland Cup or something like that. But in a local competition, of a decent standard. But he coached a couple of winners, and he had something to do with the Parramatta's lower grades and stuff like that. So if all of a sudden his name came up, and my feeling is I would love new blood, new coaching blood, somebody who hasn't coached NRL before. I think there'd be less pressure on him as well.
There would be, but I think anyone who coaches your club is going to get that pressure.
True.
Inadvertently. So,
I think
interesting times, man.
I mean, so I don't know who else is
widely speculated that they did it because they were still chasing Wayne Bennett, and then that obviously fell through. But
classic Parra. It's like an episode of Mr. Bean. It's like Keystone Capers, or whenever, like, in my mind, when I see them flying up to his farm or whatever to, like, talk to him, all I could play was the Benny Hill song.
I'd love to go with you guys, but I've already signed with someone else.
Yeah, in case you didn't know it. So maybe, I don't know. That could be true. I don't know. I don't know who else it can be. I don't want that Michael. Is it Michael Chica, the rugby union guy?
Michael Cheekham, yeah. I know Michael Cheekham's a player.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Is it Michael? Is that his first name? Anyway.
I think so. Yeah. That would be a gamble. That'd be a big gamble.
That'd be a gamble, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard though because I agree with you. Like, if you get the right coach who hasn't coached before at that level, and I don't want to be all like biased or whatever, but our guy's going pretty good. Like, he's got a way to go. But
That's a great example.
I would say so far it's been successful.
Absolutely.
But if you go for, the fella at Newcastle, he's, a bit up and down, not really my cup of tea. But they all come from that same school. I'm not a huge fan, but that's just one guy. But they obviously all come from this school where it's like, oh, you've been at the Roosters, been at Melbourne, I guess now been at Penrith, you can have a job. And I understand that mentality. You'd rather have one of those guys than a guy that's at a lesser club, but it's still no guarantee. I mean...
No, absolutely. It's no guarantee. A friend of mine said...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, the other thing is you could go for a Des Hasler, but that comes, or with Shane Flanagan, it comes with this baggage and history, and
that's why I don't want to.
You kind of know what's going to happen. Ricky Stewart, you know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah,
know, right?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm getting at when I say that I want someone new.
Yeah,
is that I don't want that baggage to arrive with that other coach. But your example, the Fitzgibbon example, is a great one because he's done, he's done very well. A friend of mine the other day said, you've got to be careful with someone like Jason Riles, for example, because maybe what Bellamy does with players, the way Bellamy turns a plodder into a world beater, like what's his name, Law from Melbourne, who was at the Tigers, did nothing at the Tigers.
You can just use the words Brian Norrie if you like.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah, he's killing it, right, at the moment at the Storm. He may do that with assistant coaches. So maybe someone like Jason Riles, under Bellamy's tutelage, becomes this extra, ordinary person or coach. Take him away from that system and that influence, and perhaps he's just a mere mortal, So, we don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting times. I mean, I know it's hard to evaluate your year this year because of the injury specifically. But tell me a bit about the 2024 team. What do you like? What don't you like?
Not a lot to like. I think I've seen the words roster clean out a couple of times in social media in the last couple of weeks, and they had read my mind. There are some real passengers in that team. We started off okay, and I thought we started off okay, and Mitchell Moses was playing well, Clint Gutherson was playing well. Paulo, I'm a bit old school. Barlow, in terms of pronunciation, Barlow was coming off the bench, named as the number 10 every week, but coming off the bench, doing really, really well.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of good moments there, and we had a bit of a balance. The injuries hit, and a couple of things became apparent. We got no depth, especially in the outside backs. The other thing we don't have in the outside back is speed. Bailey Simonson is our fastest player, and he's not that fast.
Okay.
I love his effort and I love his energy, though. I like him in the team. He's a bit of a loose cannon. I kind of like that. Will Penasini I'd keep. I think he's great, but even he's not that fast. And he's a young number 3. He's a young centre, and he's not that fast. But I think guys like Mike Acevo are like, other than the tries, look, Mike Acevo can score a try from 20 metres that most humans cannot.
Yeah.
Great. I don't think it's worth to have that for the poor defensive reads, the fumbling of the bombs, the constant injuries and suspensions. I don't think it's worth it. I think there are better wingers in terms of, especially for the money. Guys like Russell. I mean, Hayes Dunster, after each season, was looking like he was actually pretty good and going, actually, this guy has really improved. He could be something. And then he's had a couple of years where he's just like, I mean, I'd be surprised if he played again. I hope he does play again, but he never came back with confidence after horrific injuries, the poor guy.
Yeah.
Russell has not shown that at all, I don't think. Sean Russell. And then our biggest issue has been that we thought we could replace Reed Marnie really easily, and the Josh Hodgson experiment didn't work. Brendan Hands has been hot and cold, but I like him. Joey Lussick has been mostly cold with a couple of good moments. But their defense isn't, what I mean, we miss Reed Marnie's defense. The stats show that Reed Marnie misses more tackles than any other player, but he also makes more tackles. That just means, that just means he's running at anything that moves, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're missing his defense. We never really replaced him. I think that's a massive, massive issue. By all accounts, Matt Arthur is a very good hooker.
Yep.
Who's apparently not that far off. So maybe we'll see a hooker coming up there in Brad Arthur's younger son. So other than a couple of moments, like we beat the Cowboys with no Moses. I think Gutho was in that team, but the Cowboys were in the middle of their 4-week losing streak. I honestly don't think there's been a single type moment for Parramatta this year at all. None.
The Cowboys game was in Darwin, yeah?
No, that was the one against the Dolphins. That was one of the worst games.
Smoked.
Yeah, that was the one where Parramatta got tired. We're leading by 14 or something.
Yeah.
And they beat us. I think they scored like 40 points in 12 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, gotcha.
It was one of the biggest schmozzles debacles I've ever seen.
It was. It
was awful.
Yeah, I was genuinely getting confused. The Cowboys game you did play good.
What's that, sorry?
The Cowboys game you played well.
No, we played well the Cowboy game. Okay, yeah. But Pat was visiting, our friend Pat, your friend of mine, Pat was visiting with his family, visiting me down here in Hobart, and we watched it together, and it's just like, oh, God.
Yeah, those situations are worse when you're around people.
Yeah.
Like you'd rather be in a quiet, dark room. And
which I have spent a lot of time watching Parramatta and the Rabbitohs last week. My wife was next to me. She doesn't normally watch football, but she just would look at me and put a hand on my shoulder and go, "Oh, they're there." And I just go like this, just look down. It's so heartbreaking. But look, all I'm looking forward to now for 2024 is just showing some signs of improvement, showing a bit of heart.
Well,
we never beat Cronulla, so I'd love to beat Cronulla.
It's going to come. Your big guns are back. We've won the past 2, 8 of the past 11. It wasn't always that way, as you remember. Tell me about some of your fun times at Shark Park.
Shark Park's one of the ones that I've been to, one of the away grounds that I've been to the most. Yeah. So you may have heard me talking about me and my dad. We used to go to games all the time. And we'd go to lots of away games. So Brookie, been lots of times to Brookie, Leichhardt Oval, Belmore Sports Ground. I had the benefit, I will tell you about Shark Park in a second, but growing up in Campsie, as I mentioned at the start, that was the time when Parramatta Stadium was being built. And I don't know if you remember, but Parramatta would play their home games at Belmore Sports Ground. It was hilarious. I'd walk to watch Parramatta in Campsie to watch Parramatta play home games.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. So, but Shark Park, we went to a lot. I remember going there again in 87. Steve Ella was our top point scorer that year, and he had a fantastic game where we beat you at Shark Park. I think it may have been Endeavour Field in 1987, Ronson Field, Caltex Field, Toyota Park, Shark Park. I don't know. There's been so many. I think it was Endeavour Field, but one of the few wins that we've had there. I do recall, though, I think these were 2 separate games. I don't know if they're 2 separate games or if it was the one game, but one where we lost by a couple of points, but we had the lead with only a few minutes to go, courtesy of Tony Williams. Remember Tony Williams, right?
Former Shark Tony Williams.
Of course, I'd totally forgotten. Former Sea Eagle, former Doggy. He started off on the wing for Parramatta and he scored a try, which got us ahead. You guys got ahead right at the end and won the match, but I was there. I was standing there with you and your brother. You weren't up in the stands. You were gracious enough to stand with me with the plebs.
Yeah.
And your brother said, look, this guy's about to come on the field. You can say now that you were present the very first time that the great Valentine Holmes walked out onto the field.
Oh, and was it that game?
Yeah. So you were there, and David, your brother David was there, and I was there.
Yeah.
And I turned around and gave David a mouthful because I always do. And I went, what are you talking about? No one's ever going to remember this bloke. Your brother was 100% correct. Of course, because I can now say I was there the very first time Valentine Holmes walked out into a first grade game. I don't know who he was replacing.
That was 2014.
Wow, there you go. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was the same game, but I think the most memorable time I had at Shark Park was you, again, very graciously, invited me to sit next to you in the sort of members area.
Yeah.
Now, it was dodgy enough that you were putting yourself out there. It was dodgy enough that I was there in a Para jersey, right?
Yeah.
And people were like, who's this guy, right?
Yeah.
But I started to get a bit mouthy.
I remember.
Yeah, and people were looking at me and going, who the hell's this guy? And then Parramatta scored first. Oh, man, it was all on then. I was like, this is great. I remember saying something like, geez, it's like a Morgan here. Everyone's so quiet. I remember at that point I had to you sort of said, all right, Sparky, you're going to have to, you might have to go down and stand with the Parramatta fans, which I gladly did.
Yeah,
we lost that game. But I do remember, coming up, and I've never, I'd like to, a lot of my jokes come from, they're either pre-thought or whatever. But I spontaneously said, because you guys kept dropping the ball, and I spontaneously just said, mate, the Sharks must think they're at Westmead Hospital. They're giving that much ball away. The least they could do is autograph it for Para.
Yeah, you know what? We were my work colleague Brendan Woodbridge was there that day.
Yeah.
And he was with you, me, and whoever else was there. And to this day, he still mentions you.
I don't remember him at all.
Yeah. Who was your friend at Bruno? Oh, yeah, Bruno. Man, he had a lot to say, True story.
I'm just keeping things lively, it's just everyone was very quiet. And you went on to win that match, Sammy. You went on to win that match as well.
Good. Yeah, there's been some years there when it's been pretty quiet, but
yeah, but we Parramatta. I know we've won one or two, but it feels like we haven't proper beat you in a long time. And the other thing that's happened a lot with Parramatta and Cronulla, even though you've won the majority, like you said, 8 out of the last 11, I'm pretty sure none of them have been floggings. There's been a lot of 2-point, 1-point, 4-point games in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the past two are decided by 4 and 2 points. So it should be a close one. Now, we do need to talk about 03, which you will in a second, but I got to say, and this never really comes to my mind until I really, really think about how to get there. And that was 2016 against you guys at Shark Park. And we're on our streak, and you went up 18-0. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You're up 18-0 after probably 20, 25. And that crowd was silent. It was like, this is the end. And then we came back.
I'm pretty sure Gutho scored a try playing in the centres, with the number 4 on his back. And when he was quite quick at the time, and he trapped a grubber kick and ran about 80 metres to score. Pretty sure that was that match. But either way, I do remember. What year did you say it was? 2016.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if Bevan French scored a couple of tries.
He was there. Yeah, he was there. I think he got a hat trick.
Yeah, and I watched this game at the Henson Park Hotel, yes, I wish you hadn't reminded me, but I do remember that.
It just sort of kept, every game was special to us that year, obviously, but I think that was some sort of record, our longest streak since whenever.
Yeah,
kept it alive, kept us at the top table, moving forward. But I sort of get the feeling if we hadn't have come back that day, I don't know, it wouldn't have been as special a year. Maybe we wouldn't have gone all the way. I don't know, but that was a really important part as a fan for us to get where we were going. But let's talk about 03. Let's talk with our hands about this and
about 03
at Para.
Yeah.
Does that not ring a bell?
2003.
Yeah.
Was that one of the?
Am I barking up the wrong tree here? I'm talking with my hands.
Sorry, yeah. I had a mind blank for a second. I've forgotten what year it was. Are you talking about the one where you guys got 4 players sim in and we won 7? What was the score in the end? I can't even remember.
That's the one I'm talking about. Possibly 70-4 or something like that.
70-4. I think Jamie Lyons scored I don't know.
Parramatta
scored 70 points. Jamie Lyons scored 80 of them.
Yeah, David Peachy I think either sin binned or sent off. I should know, but one or the other for talking with his hands.
Yes. Yeah, I remember it well. Do you know where I saw that match? In the backstage room of a venue that we were playing at in Brisbane when we were touring with that New Zealand band Good Shirt.
Yeah.
And they thought it was really weird that we were watching footy because they were all into the arts and shit, and so was I. Of course, I'm into the arts. I love the arts. But as you mentioned earlier, one can be into the arts and into their footy as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I remember that that match. Look, I don't remember it as well, as vividly as you would think, because I don't actually go back and go, oh yeah, what a game, because I know the circumstances. It's not that satisfying.
Yeah.
To have, like, you notice in the matches, my most memorable matches, that doesn't even come up, and it took me a second to register it.
Yeah.
It doesn't register on my radar at all as a great match for Parramatta at all, because you guys had, I think part of the game you played with 10 players. Definitely all of the match you played with at least 12, and then sometimes 11. And I think for a moment there, 10, for a while.
Yeah. I mean, it was the Chris Anderson era. It wasn't a good era. And that was...
Yeah, you weren't a great team to begin with, yeah.
Yeah. But my memory of that game is I don't know if I watched the game with Rob Cranny, our mutual friend, but I was with him, that night to rehearse or something, or to hang out.
Mm.
And he was begging me to record the game, like the replay. He's like, you've got to record the replay. We're going to laugh about this in 20 years. And I was like, I'm not going to laugh about this in 100 years.
Did he know the score and he wanted you to record it?
Yeah. So we yeah. And I was like, Rob, do you not think they'll show this one in 20 years' time as a landmark game, which they do every summer,
Yeah, right.
But that's one of the memories I have. I was just like, what do you, come on, Rob. Anyway.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
He's a crazy guy. Let's talk about tomorrow night. And for people listening, that is game day night, so to speak, at Parramatta Stadium, at Combank Stadium, one of the great stadiums of the world. Should be a great match. You've got a full strength team, I want to say. Is that correct or not? Oh, you haven't got your rep player. Who's your rep player? Hopgood.
Oh, Jermaine Hopgood, who's, pretty much our most consistent player. We also don't have Madison, who's something's going on there. There's something weird going on.
You've got him. You're just not playing him.
Yeah, he's in the reserves. Yeah. You're right. We've got him. He's in the reserves. I don't know why, but there is something going on there. But I like Matto as a player, so
I can confirm he hasn't made the 19, the cutoff squad. We've got that right now. He's not.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. But yeah, look, we're as full strength as it get. I've got low battery happening here. Hopefully that if it dies out, I'll plug it in the next 30 seconds. But
okay.
We've got a full strength team for all intents and purposes, other of course than Jermaine Hopgood. You guys don't, but it still looks like a pretty good team. I mean, Cameron McInnes is obviously almost irreplaceable, but you got what's his name, Jack Black, Jack White, Jack Williams. That's
yes.
And I'll make everyone's favourite driving instructor, Tricky Trindle, at halfback. So I don't think you lose too much. And you got that new guy, Atkinson. Is that his surname?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like.
I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but we do lose a lot. We're losing our two best players. So
no, you are. You're losing your two best players. There's no doubt about that.
They have shown, though. They've shown under very odd circumstances they can do it. They went down to Melbourne without one of those guys, and with Dan Atkinson playing the game of his life, and they won. They can do these things when they want to.
Yeah, that was a good game. I saw that match. I was super impressed with Cronulla that game. That was the first time this year I've gone, all right, okay, real deal.
Yeah, for sure. And they beat the Roosters the next week, real deal. And then fall down with their pants down against the Panthers.
Don't worry about it. A bit of a hiccup. Don't worry about it.
I'm not worried, but I expected more. So
yeah,
that's the concern.
Not great. Yeah, 42-0 is not great. But no, look, it should be a close game. If anyone can lose this, it's Para. They're favourites. And really, I'll be honest, I expect them to win. I would not be happy with anything other than a win, and nor should they, given the circumstances.
Yeah, I agree. Like you've got us at a good time, and I think you definitely should be favourites.
Mm.
Do you think there'll be much rust with the 1 and the 7, or they're just going to sort of slot back in?
No, gosh, no.
No.
No way. No, like, I think when you're talking about guys like Gutherson and Moses, whatever, and I know they cop a lot of shit in terms of like, I know they cop a lot of criticism for the way they are. They're super competitive. They're argumentative. But forget all that. When you're dealing with that caliber of player, I would expect the same with anyone, like any sort of representative or, almost representative player. They're professionals. They come straight into it like they have not missed a beat. That's what makes them those players. If they were the kind of players that needed 3 matches to get into it, they wouldn't be those players. You know what I mean? So, I don't expect any rust whatsoever from Moses and Gutho.
Are you a Dylan Brown guy on the field? You like him? You think he's
let's keep it on the field. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when he runs, I like his running game. I think he's gotten better over the years. He lacks a little bit of. Sometimes he looks a little too relaxed. He lacks a little bit of dynamicism. Of I'm trying to think of like some of those nervy young halves that can find a gap and can really get in the face, and a bit of urgency maybe.
Yeah, he's a bit chill sometimes. But
geez, he can make everything look pretty easy. And he's got some skill. So, look, I'm a massive Dylan Brown fan. I got no problem with that. It's a shame that Ethan Sanders, the guy that played 1 game for Para and is now going to Canberra. It's a shame we can't keep him, but I understand why. Mitchell Moses has probably got 4 good years left in him. Sanders isn't going to wait that long. Brown's probably got 10 good years left in him. So, yeah.
Tell me, who's your favourite current day Shark?
My favourite Shark, I know everyone loves Nico Hines, but I reckon I can't go past your fullback. I reckon Will's just he's amazing. He's consistent. He's dynamic. I could see him being a future 5'8" if you needed to go that way. His consistency is amazing. I'd never seen him play sort of bad games. His energy is incredible. He's very good positionally, like in terms of, defensive, saves a few tries for you, scores them. Like, I reckon he's my favorite just because he's been sort of coming up that way for the last few years. Do you know what I mean? Whereas Nico Hines is a little newer. Cameron McInnes is great, but I actually really like, guy scored a winning try against us last year. White dude. Well, there's not that many, so I'm just differentiating. Wilton. I think he's great.
I'd say, he's our captain tomorrow night.
Oh, right, yeah. I think he's really, really good. I think he's a great player.
Yeah. Are you talking about the game in 2022, round 2?
Maybe he Parramatta were
at
leading until the end, and you converted a kick after full time. A kick for his try. He scored the equaling try.
Yeah, that was our first win under Fitzy and Nico Hines. Nico kicked the goal. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And Parramatta should have won that match, didn't again. But and yet another match that you won by 2 points. But I remember he came onto my radar when he scored that try, and I've kept an eye on him since. I really like him as well. Yeah.
Who's some of your favourite all-time Sharks?
Oh, it's the old school ones for me. Guys like Gavin Miller, Dean Carney. Remember Dean Carney?
Of course.
Sorensen brothers, Barry Russell.
Yeah,
of course. Trying to think more recently. They're not on my radar as much as the teams like, I don't know, those teams like, because I've never hated the Sharks, right? But I do hate Canterbury, and I do hate West Tigers, and I do hate, a lot of other teams, right? Manly.
Why do you hate West Tigers?
Actually, I don't have a problem with West Tigers. It's their fans I can't stand.
Oh, sure.
It's probably to do with my friends, a lot of your friends that like the West Tigers.
Yeah.
But, hate Manly, but I've never hated the Sharks. So in a way, I've paid less attention to them. So I'm less familiar with with the modern players, probably Benny Barber. And I know, I know he had his heyday in Canterbury, but, he was your fullback when you won the grand final. And I feel sorry for him.
Do you think he had a better year in 2012 or 2016?
Probably. He was probably flashier in 2012, but he probably had a better year in 2016.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean by that?
That one, yeah, I do. That one comes up a lot. And I think, everyone listening is a Sharks fan, and we followed him on that journey, and it was like he was unbelievable. Like without him winning it. But yeah, 2012, I guess, was more 100-meter tries or whatever. This was a bit.
That's what I mean. He was flashier, but he had a better year in 2016. Yeah. Ben Barber's probably added, and I know that's not that recent now, but in recent times, I'd say Ben Barber's my favorite. Love your wingers at the moment. They're amazing as well. Jesus Christ, you can't swing a cat without them scoring a try. It's to mix my metaphors, but
Excellent. Okay, and so you're back in Sydney for the grand final weekend.
Yeah, I'm back in Sydney actually in July for something else.
Okay.
I'll talk to you about that later. But
have you looked at the calendar? What's going on in the footy calendar?
I'm not sure if I'm going to get a chance to watch any footy there.
Okay.
I certainly won't be able to go to a footy game, unfortunately, that weekend.
Gotcha.
I've got a couple of important things on.
Okay.
But I haven't seen who's on at that particular weekend. But other than that, yes, I'm in Sydney in grand final weekend. Yep.
Well, I mean, you might go on a run. Now your boys are back. You might go on a run.
Who knows?
It's a long comp. It's a long comp.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't rule it out, except we got people like Sean Lane who couldn't catch a ball if it was super glued to his hand. So
you don't mind I don't know if it's a hasty purchase, but Sean Lane, he's one of those guys that I look at in other teams and I go, they're paying him a chunk of money, and he's an average player, and he probably had a breakout year at Manly, and you went, I'll take him.
No, he had a couple of good seasons at Parra. He's been good at Parra at times. He had that awesome season 2022. He was amazing. He was on the verge of being selected for New South Wales at one point. But
yeah. I just feel like sometimes guys like that are made to look good by those around.
Absolutely.
They don't, Anyway, I'm not picking on the guy.
No. But I think it's become obvious that Mitchell Moses is making a lot of people look good.
Yeah. I'm actually a little apprehensive about this game, unfortunately, because I'm not just saying, you've got your fullback and your halfback, then you're going to win. I'm not looking at it like that. I just think that Moses in particular, he's pretty good. Like we saw it. I'm not an Origin guy, but we saw it at Origin. He won them that game, and he seems to be able to lift to these challenges. This is a new challenge for you guys. You want to make a play at the finals later on. This is where it starts. Every game counts, and people have written you off for the year pretty much, which is silly.
Yeah, they got nothing to lose, and Mitchell Moses is a competitor, and he's got a point to prove. So yeah, I could see him having a good game. Yeah, absolutely.
So it should be a good one. Thank you so much for your time. We've been
thank you.
Every year we're sort of trying to tee it up. It never happens, but we're glad we got you this year.
Yeah, thanks for making it happen. Thanks for letting me run along.
Pleasure. Great to hear your story, most of which I know, but I know a lot of our listeners are going to enjoy it. While we got you, before your battery runs out, could you please spruik your band, I don't want to use the word solo project, your own.
It's a solo project. There's no other way to say it, Sam.
Well, you say it. Say what you want to say.
It's a solo thing. It's called Buddy Glass, as you mentioned at the beginning. It's totally different to Peabody, other than the fact that it's my voice. I write all the songs, play a lot of the instruments, not all of them. I record a lot of the stuff. Got a couple of albums. So if you look up Buddy Glass, Bandcamp, that sort of stuff. Got a couple of albums that I think, are decent, that I'm quite proud of. And it's been mostly my thing for the last sort of few years. I'm trying to get the third Buddy Glass album happening here. So hopefully that sees the light of day at some point. So yeah, Peabody and Buddy Glass. Much like yourself, I haven't, other than me being in your band, Sam, which I was some of the best years of my musical life, I'm not one of those guys that has been in like 50 bands and has got all these outputs and projects and things. I've been fairly sort of singularly focused. Yeah.
Yes, which is a great way to be.
I like it. Works for us.
So yeah, Peabody, if you want to go check them out, a bit more sort of aggressive but melodic, alternative rock, I'm going to say, just to generalize.
Sure.
And as you said, the solo stuff's a bit more folky, a bit more acoustic, but you're very. Remember, you and I, we had this conversation over our lives about how we both have unique. That's the word, unique voices. You and I, we both have unique singing voices.
We're more stylists than singers.
Yeah, sure. I'm unfortunately not even that, but I do remember at some point in our lives, I think it was probably earlier rather than late, but maybe even middle. I remember we had a conversation, and either someone said it about us, or maybe I said it about us, or you said it. We met somewhere, and it was like, you and I are unique singers, and we both looked at each other and went, "Oh, okay, well, that's our plight in life." Absolutely, you know.
I'll go with that. I'm happy with unique singer. I'm happy with unique singer. I'll take that any day of the week.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll talk to you another time. Maybe in the finals. You never know.
You never know. Where am I? Where's my bed? Got this in Brisbane when I was on tour. Got this in Brizzy on tour. Nice. It's just a blue and yellow hoodie that someone has sewn a patch onto. I bought it for $20 in Brisbane when I was on tour at the markets there in Fortitude Valley, maybe 20 years ago. Here I am.
Wow, that's unique.
That's unique.
All right, thanks, Bruno. We'll talk to you soon, and everyone else. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you don't mind the rock and roll talk, but that's sometimes where we go on this show. This is SharkCast Pod. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you as soon as we can. Up, Cronulla.